My next guest, Bree, says she has been called everything from learning disabled to possessed. But she is none of those things. Bree has been living with epilepsy most of her life and says it's frustrating how misinformed people are when it comes to her illness.
When I have a seizure, it starts with an aura, which is the sign of more to come. I lose my hearing, my ability to speak, my shoulder may start to twitch, and then I get really confused. I was diagnosed at age 4 with a seizure disorder. There's a lot of fear and misinformation about epilepsy. Sometimes people think you are mentally disabled, delayed, or even possessed. People think I have a demon inside of me. I have absent seizures where I am staring off into space and it's like the lights are on and nobody's home. These seizures may seem momentary, but they do greatly affect my life. Right now, I can't leave the house by myself. I can't drive a car. I have problems with being able to go out and do things with friends. I can't take a shower with nobody home. When I have a seizure, people react differently. They think I'm gonna die right in front of them. In past jobs, I have felt shunned, lost hours, and at times been forced to quit my job. I want to demystify epilepsy. I feel like I can live a very full life as long as I'm aware of my environment and what's going on so that I don't hurt myself or I don't hurt somebody else.
Well, Bree is here with us along with our good friend, Dr. Frida Lewis Hall, Chief Medical Officer of Pfizer. So welcome.
Thank you.
Now, when people think seizures, they usually think of the ones they see on TV or in the movies, right? I mean, extreme convulsing on the ground, foaming at the mouth, all that type thing. But it's not always that way. In fact, there are various types of seizures, all manifesting differently, right?
Yes, there are different types of seizures, but they have something in common, and that is all seizures are really the result of sudden, abnormal electrical activity in the brain. And epilepsy is actually a diagnosis that's given to a person that has a pattern of repetitive seizures, like Bree described. And what's important to understand is that there are a couple of types of seizures. So I wanted to mention 2 of those types that are based on their onset. So one we recognize generalized, and the other one is partial. So as you mentioned, Dr. Phil, the generalized seizure is the one that we often see in the movies or in television. It involves the entire brain, the whole brain. And it's characterized by loss of consciousness. The person may fall to the floor. They have those characteristic jerking movements of their arms and legs and body, and they may even lose their bladder control. Mm-hmm. There's another type of seizure that we talk about. Those are partial seizures. Their onset is related to a part of the brain, partial. And these, as Bree helped us understand, are very different from person to person and in the same person from seizure to seizure. And they can be characterized by differences in consciousness like staring or seeming unresponsive or confused, emotional changes. They can also involve movements. Bree told us about the movement in her shoulder that sometimes happens. Sometimes people get facial grimacing or make different faces. And then last but not least is sensory change. They may smell things that don't really exist or lose their hearing like Bree described to us.
Mm-hmm. You have had a seizure since you've been to LA. You had one yesterday. Doctor, what we're seeing here is some tracking of the head, right?
Yes.
And tell us what's your level of awareness at this point?
I'm
Bree?
totally unconscious.
So at this point, you're not seeing this, you don't remember this at all?
No, not at all.
So you didn't have even partial consciousness?
Nope.
People with epilepsy and their families, they do face challenges with this, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's so much misunderstanding and hurtful behavior that happen in communities and in people around both the person who has epilepsy as well as their family members. Mm-hmm. And it's really important to understand and help and support. Some of that can come from community organizations. Sometimes there's online resources that are available. But another important thing to remember is that we have an opportunity to learn more about seizures. With that, we might be able to decrease the misunderstanding and to change some of the stigma that currently exists.
Right. And Bree has been dealing with epilepsy since you were 4 years old, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like you have a good handle on your seizures?
I'm fortunate that I have an aura, which is a signal that I know that one is coming, so I can sit down or let somebody know that something is coming. I don't have them super often, at least not the ones that I lose consciousness. But then again, my seizures are changing right now, and I don't know if that's uncommon or not.
And your question is this something you should be concerned about?
Yes.
Should you get another evaluation?
A lot of things can actually change the level of control of seizures. Stress is one that can really have an impact. Other health disorders can have an impact on seizures. And then add to that things like changes in sleep pattern, travel, changes in levels of activity during the day, hormonal levels can change, food, medications.
Do you get it checked frequently? Do you have a tracking?
I do keep in contact with my doctor. Unfortunately, I live about 4.5 hours away from my specialist, so it's hard to go more than about once a year. But fortunately, through email and things like that, I am able to keep in contact with him and let him know if things are changing.
Yeah, and that's important to stay in touch with the treatment team, right?
It's really critical, and again, especially in the event that some things seem to be changing, you stay on top of that, and then you can work with the healthcare team to try and do the detective work to figure out what's causing it. And then you can decide whether or not there are some specific tests that need to be done, whether or not the treatment plan should be changed at that time. So, you know, there's so much that's going on in the area of epilepsy now. We have more and more brain research that's being done so that we understand more about the brain and its function. And there are clinical studies that are going on to look at the potential for new treatments. So there's a lot to learn and know. And of course, for more information, you can go to gethealthystayhealthy.com, where we've got information on epilepsy, links to resources, and information on clinical trials.
Yeah, so gethealthystayhealthy.com.